Hey, David, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Jay. Excited to be here.
So I'm really excited to chat because you have just done all kinds of things. I was digging through your bio and portfolio and just kind of reading your story. And gosh, I don't want to ruin it for you, so I'll kind of let you tell it. Give us a little bit of that, like, how did you end up as an entrepreneur? Because that's a big thing. Some people go through corporate life and then transition to owning their own thing. Some people start young. Some people have a mixed experience. So what was that like for you? What was your journey into getting into entrepreneurship in the first place?
I was, let's say, an extreme misfit. I didn't fit into the school system. I went to 14 different schools. I was just not made for that. And then I just dropped out and didn't do anything. I felt pretty lost, didn't know what to do. And a friend of mine approached me, said, like, hey man, you could do computers, let's start a business together. And this is how I got into my entrepreneurial journey. And this was like my moments, where I realized that I can do something where I can do whatever I want to do, and I can focus on the stuff I want to focus on and learn the stuff I want to learn. And this is how I got into this in the first place at a young age.
So when you start as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of things to learn, obviously, and you start doing things that maybe you're good at. It sounds like you probably were pretty good on computers originally, because you've done a lot of software projects, things like that. Was that your area? Like, was it development? Was it software creation? Where was your skill set originally that you kind of leveraged and turned into a business?
Originally, I was a Linux system and network engineer. So a total nerd. And the first business was a business where we were maintaining in-house servers of small and mid-sized businesses. This kind of dates me, because back then when servers were not in the cloud somewhere, where they were in the company's basement. And this is kind of how we got started. And then one thing led to another. And one of my customers was the biggest hookah water pipe, like Oriental water pipe manufacturer in Europe. And every time when I went to his office, he annoyed me, saying like, hey man, can you let's start a business together. I don't have no idea about the online stuff. And he was very persistent and really annoying, to the point where I just set up an online store and said, okay, now there's that. Let's see what happens. And it took off like crazy and turned into a really solid business. So I stopped my IT business. And after a few years, this got boring. The only thing I enjoyed was the SEO part, and this was the only thing that I was doing at some point was the SEO part and the books. If I would have answered another question like, is this product available in green or yellow, I would have shot myself in the face. So it got boring. So I want to get back to something that's more challenging for me. So I started a little bit of consulting, but my real dream was to move to the United States and have a business there, because back then in Germany, there was no real startup scene. So it was pretty boring. I felt a little bit alone. And then I sold my business, which gave me the money to get my investor visa to move to the United States. And I moved to LA in 2009, where I co-founded MaxCDN, which was a content delivery network, which we sold 4 years ago, four and a half years ago, had a really good exit. And it was a really fun ride. Learned a lot, especially about mission, vision, and values. I learned a ton. First time where a business really scaled, I really felt the effects of how important it is to have a proper mission, vision, and values, and communicate this with everybody in the team, and create this emergence or emergency. And it's Emergenz, it's in German. It's like that an organism, like say, when you have a swarm of fish and something comes, they kind of move in the same way. So everybody kind of knows what they have to do in this big whole organization. And you don't have to kind of ask everybody, up the chain, kind of everybody knows by default what to do. And so sold this, and then we moved back to Europe. My wife wanted to go back to Germany, but I couldn't go back to the German weather conditions. So we moved to the south of Turkey. I'm very happy here. And kind of, since we're talking about mission, vision, values, I had a big wake-up moment when my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. Knock on wood, today she's doing great. But this was a big wake-up moment for me, where I looked back at my life thinking, did I really do what I was supposed to do? Kind of seeing myself laying my own deathbed. Honey, I'm on a podcast. Do you want to say hi to everybody? I can't. I don't know where your iPad is on. Sorry, work from home issues.
That's okay. It's pretty normal right now.
So yeah, I had this big, I don't know, midlife crisis, awakening thingy, kind of really reevaluating what am I doing here, and I want to do something that has more impact. That's also why I talked to my business partners about selling MaxCDM back then, because it was growing and cool and fun and all, but it was not something that I was deeply passionate about. Then I created a course. So I thought about what can I do that has impact, and I created a course that helps. First, initially, was my wife and I figured out that if you apply business principles to family life, everything becomes much easier. So we, the initial thing was, I came home after a meeting about the roles and responsibilities at MaxCDN, and I sat down on the couch, and it was late, and my daughter was still in diapers, and she had a full diaper, and I pointed out to my wife, like, "Hey, honey, look, Emma has a full diaper," and my wife like blew up and got pissed because she took it like I'm telling her to change the diaper. I was tired, just like pointing it out. And I thought, why are we fighting about this? You know, she changed the diaper 80%, 90% of the time, and I'm happy to do it. You know, it's no problem. But how do I know that it's my turn right now? And then I realized, okay, we never talked about the roles and responsibilities at home. And then we sat down the next day, wrote this down. This took away 80% of all the friction we ever had in our relationship. And I thought, like, holy cow, if this works so well, maybe we take other stuff from business and apply it to our personal life, like having family core values, having a mission, having regular meetings, having, you know, kind of a shared calendar, like a Trello in the family, etc. And this worked so well, so I wanted to share it with people. And then, you know, I did this course, and I thought, okay, I'll just chill here in Turkey and focus on this course. But it turned out it's too much of family therapy, you know, and I'm a business guy, I'm not a family therapist. So I also read a book, which if you haven't read, I can highly recommend. It's called Conscious Capitalism. Have you heard about this?
I have not, no.
It's by John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, and the idea is that the old way of doing business is the business has to increase shareholders' value. That's the only reason why business exists. And the new way of doing business is you have to take care of all stakeholders of the business. So kind of, you know, take care of the employees, the suppliers, the customers, the shareholders, the environment, you know, the community, etc. And this kind of gave me this aha moment, like, hey, actually building a business can also have like an awesome impact, and I want to employ as many people as possible. So I started an outsourcing business called ltvplus.com, where we focus on e-commerce and SaaS businesses, where we help them to do live chat, support tickets, failed payment recovery, and all that stuff. And my goal was to get to 10,000 people, so I can provide an awesome work environment and an awesome job and put food on people's table, something that, you know, I'm passionate about. And then I bought TaskDrive.com, which is a business that one of my old business partners started, which is a lead research business. It's also a people business. You know, we help, it's like sales development as a service type thing. And it was similar in nature, also people business, product as service. And then, you know, I bought this and added this one. Then I started Shortlist.io and invested into it with a business partner, and it's a digital marketing agency. And since we're talking about mission, vision, values, we always talked about like kind of having like a clear vision on what we do with the business. And, you know, we're just like a marketing agency kind of doing, you know, marketing for everybody. You know, it was like kind of online marketing, of course, and focusing on e-commerce and yeah, just online businesses. And 3 weeks ago, we decided, okay, let's only focus on the health and so, you know, organic products and basically companies that do good in the world. Let's only focus on those. And once we did this, once we had this clear vision, a lot of decisions that we were like procrastinating on, for example, we built this SEO tool, which is kind of cool, but it didn't really take off. So we have to invest more resources into kind of make it work and blah, like, you know, we're in front of this decision. Do we grow this or do we trash this or what do we do with it? And then once we made this clear decision, like what's our purpose, it became super clear, like, yeah, let's cut it. You know, it's not really in line with what we're doing here. And yeah, a few other businesses, speak on podcast.com, where we book people on podcast shows. And 50 SaaS, which is a a dev shop, and my main focus right now, and all these businesses are, again, talking about mission, vision, values, and organizational development. They have GMs or business partners that are running them. I'm not involved in the day-to-day, which only really flies if you kind of set a really good foundation that this can happen. And sorry for jumping back and forth.
No, it's great. The problem now is I have like 50 things that I want to talk about as it relates to things that you just talked about. Where do I want to start? I want to start with the idea of caring for others. That conscious capitalism, I think, is super interesting, and it will tie everything else back together. It made me think about, when I hired my first actual employee versus a contractor. So like people that may be listening all over the world, like in the United States, you have an employee and you have a contractor. An employee is a little bit more of a dedicated team member. There's other tax implications, all kinds of things. And the contractor is a little bit different, a little bit more kind of freelance, if you will. And the market had collapsed in 2008 here, and it was a real mess economically. A lot of people were losing jobs, and I'd always only had contractors, and it was working perfectly fine. But I thought, you know what? I think I could make a full-time job for somebody. And my desire and dream at that point wasn't really just to scale the business or make more money. Those things are great, but it was really about, like, could I create an environment for somebody else to have an opportunity that maybe they don't currently have? And that's exactly how I think about my team now, is like, of course I want to make more money. Of course, everybody wants to make more money. But at the end of the day, there's a certain point where you kind of go, all right, well, but now what? Like, what other impact am I having? And I just love that idea of, like, a business can have a bigger purpose than just profitability. Of course, it has to be profitable. You can't pay people if it's not, but it can be bigger than that. And
actually, like in this book, once you read this book, you'll see that he makes the point that the business focusing only on, we have to increase shareholders' value, in the long run will make less money than the ones that are actually focusing on, like, taking care of everybody who's involved in the business. An example is a publicly traded company. They have to look like rock stars at the end of the quarter, because the earnings call, etc., right? And then they do things that are unethical and looking at the short term. So, for example, okay, let's fire everybody who's senior and just like replace them with young people. We're going to look like a rock star in the next earnings and maybe the 2 or 3 earnings calls after that. But the dissatisfaction of the customer, because these people are not as good as the ones that were there before, will kind of bite you in the back at some point, and so revenue will decline. And yeah, it's really a lot of really beautiful examples in this book. You'll dig that.
Yeah, I'm excited to read that. I definitely will get it on my Audible list. The other thing I wanted to dig into more, you've talked about it a little bit, but let's talk about mission, vision, and values. Obviously, values are important to me. My values of our company are drawn up on the wall behind me. And so, but that's not always been like that. And before the show, I was saying, I used to believe that, like, things like that, mission, vision, and values specifically, were just corporateese that got put in a brochure or somebody laminated on a wall, and that was just what big companies did. And that as an entrepreneur,
and there were empty words on top of it.
That's right. They were empty words. They were talking points. They were, things they said that didn't really line up, because you see a lot of we all see a lot of examples of that. And I just thought, I don't need those. I don't need to write those down. But I was convinced probably almost a decade ago at this point that those things really do matter. And what it changed for me was, back in the day when we just built websites, we just built basic websites in the early days. I just built them by myself at some point. There's a big difference between just building a website and actively working to help other companies grow their business. And that's like our mission now, is to help other people grow their business in simple terms. So that's a different thing than just building websites or writing copy or designing things. Lots of people can do those. They don't have as much value as the idea of actually investing in another company to help them achieve their dreams. Like, that's a big idea. And it has so much more impact. You can see, even as I start to talk about it, even I start to light up about it and get excited about it. So what does that do to our teams? So let's talk. I'd love to hear you talk about really how an entrepreneur or a small business owner, or maybe a middle-sized business owner that doesn't have these things established, where should they start? What's the first thing they should do when they're trying to put their mission, vision, and values that are floating around up there? How do they put them on paper for the...
So let me tell you a story on MaxCDN, how we figured out our mission and vision and how this went with MaxCDN. So we started out as NetDNA, which was an enterprise-focused CDN, which we thought, okay, let's just do what Akamai does, leave a few features out, make it cheaper, and everyone will come and run in our doors, and which did not happen. I think mainly it did not happen for the reason that CDN is, there has to be a lot of trust involved, especially with these big players, these enterprise customers. They don't want to buy from a nobody. If you have read Crossing the Chasm, the idea is that these enterprise people who are in the early majority of the bell curve in Crossing the Chasm, they only buy what their peers buy, because they make a decision for, not what's necessarily best for the business, but what's best for them. You may have heard nobody gets fired for choosing IBM. So, they kind of, want to make this decision. And we're not getting proper traction with NetDNA because of that, like we were self-funded, we didn't have big backed investors, etc. So we sat down and thought, like, okay, what's really broken in the market right now? And back then, CDN was an enterprise play, and if you were a small startup, you want a CDN contract, you have to, do an annual contract or a 2-year contract, and you pay $500 a month, and this was just not feasible for startups out there. So we thought, okay, our vision becomes make CDN as easy as possible to use and as accessible as possible. So we launched the brand Max CDN, and people could just come there, type in their credit card information, bada boom, pay $10, and then they have access to a CDN and can implement it. And this took off like crazy.
Yeah, really just a side tangent. For anybody who doesn't know what a CDN is, it means Content Distribution Network. It's basically a place to store a bunch of things and distribute them across multiple locations so they can get to them faster. There's a lot more to it than that, but on a layman's term, that's kind of roughly what it is. And ironically, I've actually had used that service many times in the past. In the early days. So
that's so cool. I love it. That's awesome.
Sorry, go ahead. But
always happy to meet a customer. So, and we really took off, and but we really messed up because, as you said, like you thought, like mission, vision, values, like who needs this? I'd rather focus on building more product, or like it's just BS. And then we hired more and more people, and we messed up by not telling these people what our actual mission was. What are we here to actually do? And so we hired a new head of sales who was running after enterprise clients again, which was not our focus. We hired a new head of engineering who came from Splunk, who wanted to build this big data platform, who did build this big data platform on top of MaxCDN, which was super cool, but only for 5% of our users. So basically, we were running into 10 different directions, and kind of not getting anywhere because we got stuck. And then we realized this was because we did not share what we're about, to make CDN as accessible as possible and as easy to use as possible for XYZ customers, for startups, also focusing on DevOps and engineers. And this was like kind of our core. And then we realized this, and we sat down on a table with the leadership team, and then we came up with redefined our mission, vision, and values. And once we had this in place, we took off again because we're having this decision-making framework on what to build and who to build it for. For example, in your case, with you want to make these website owners or these businesses succeed. And then if you build a website, you don't think about okay, let's build a pretty website, slap it on the web, and that's it. But kind of like, what are their goals? How do they want to drive leads? Like blah, kind of like it becomes a way bigger discussion, and you kind of make better decisions on that. A friend of mine started the Ring.com, the doorbell company that sold to Amazon for a lot of money. And I was talking to him and his head of engineering and about mission, vision, values. And he said, one of our engineers came to us and said, hey, I have this amazing idea. We have these floodlights. They have these floodlights you put on the side of the house. And when somebody walks past, the lights go on, then you can see this person and talk to them hey, what are you doing on my property? Get lost or call the police. He said, since these things have a microphone and the lights, we could develop the party mode. So if you turn on party mode, these things will flash with the light. The engineer thought that's the best idea since sliced bread. And my buddy could have told him hey man, that's a stupid idea, go back to your desk and work, and then this person would have been crushed, would have not been productive, would never tell you any new ideas. But what he said is hey man, that's cool, but what does this have to do with our mission, which is to make neighborhoods safer? Nothing. And then boom, and then the person can kind of make decisions. It's the way that, that are in line with, so everybody in the organization can make decisions the same way the leadership team would make them.
That's so good. I think the impact that those things can have of the reminder of who are we, why do we do what we do, and what's the purpose of that outcome are so big. And I think that the risk that a lot of founders or lead entrepreneurs kind of take on is they potentially know that, or maybe they don't. A lot of times people don't really, but maybe they think that they know, but their team doesn't know. Their team just knows what tasks in front of them or what their work is for that week.
Yep.
And unless you define that bigger vision of where are we going, who are we serving, what kind of impact are we trying to make, they get lost. We all get lost, frankly. And frankly, I think it's just as important, as I say that, as it is for the team, as it is for, me as a leader. I need to be reminded of that because I like to fly all over the place and try this and try that and try this. And it's easy for me. I'm probably the most distractible one of the entire organization. And so it's important for me to know, hold on, what's our mission here? What's our purpose? What are we accomplishing? And does this line up with that? Does this person line up with that? Because it's also a good barometer. I mean, our core values are a good barometer for the people that work here. What about that? Like, as far as, specifically values, like defining who needs to be on the team, like how have you used that over the years to help you kind of filter the right people?
So, yeah, absolutely 100% agree with what you just said. For example, in terms of filtering at Max CDN, our first core value is build cool shit, kind of written in with the dollar sign, etc. The word shit, because we wanted to attract engineering-minded folks, because we're like engineering-focused company. We want to build cool shit and want people that are excited about building cool shit. But we also want people that get repel people who get offended by hearing the word shit in the core value of a company. So we don't want people that want to come. You want to come to work with a suit and tie. Like you will not thrive in our environment. So we kind of want to block you right from the gate. And so with the core values, when we come up with them, we look at, let's say you have a few star players on your team, and you kind of like, when you talk about them, like what are the traits that these people have, and then kind of what you want more of, basically. Then you kind of define core values around this, and then you also add things in that you're aspiring to. For example, in the current business, we just added the core value initiative because we work with a lot of people in the Philippines, and we found that they don't really show that much initiative. They do what you tell them to do, but they're not, they're kind of scared, they're holding back, they don't want to just see something that could be improved, kind of say it, and that's something we want to foster. So it's always about things that you really are and things that you're aspiring to. So you can use it as a filter and as a management tool. For example, let's say someone says, we had at Maxian was own it. We build trust through total accountability was one of our core values. And when somebody from the team dropped the ball and then comes up with excuses and blah, just have to say, hey man, just own it, or point to the wall where the core is, like, just own it. And there's like, the discussion is over. It's like, yeah, man, you're right. Sorry, it won't happen again. So it kind of saves a lot of the back and forth. And how we enforce it right now is we show people in the hiring process, we talk about our mission, vision, values, and then at the end, when they sign the contract, they have to initial F next to each core value and then sign it that I'm going to live up to this, or I can be terminated because this is kind of what we're about here. And then we do every once a month we do an onboarding call with all the new employees, and we walk them through our mission, vision, and core values in depth and tell them core value stories, kind of how we display this core value in a real life situation, so they can kind of like get inspired by this and kind of make this as well. And something I mentioned before, what you said, like if the leader violates these core values or the vision or the mission, if you really drive these core values and mission vision into the team, then they will hold you accountable, saying like, hey man, what you're doing is like, it's not in line with this core value. So, and it's really becomes really powerful, like a self-governing system. Yeah,
we actually use it in our reviews. So, everybody has a peer review basically where they review, does the other team members you work with, do they usually, sometimes, or rarely align with this core value? And we have 6, and the goal is that of the 6, at least 4 of them you would usually align with, no less than 2 you would sometimes align with, and none of them you would rarely align with. Basically, if somebody rarely aligns with a core value, they either have some adjustments they need to make or they need to leave. Like, there's 1 or 2 options.
Are you running EOS?
Yes. Yeah. So we love traction, love EOS. So we use that as a part of that people analyzer piece of the puzzle.
Likewise.
Awesome. So a lot of commonality there, which is always great. I love meeting. That's why I love doing this show. I told my wife originally when I first started the show, I said, you know what? Even if nobody watches the show, or nobody listens to the show, I'm gonna get to spend half an hour to an hour with another entrepreneur. And one of the things you said,
awesome
one of the things you said at the very beginning earlier is when you had first started. We were in Germany, you were trying to figure out the entrepreneur scene, the startup scene wasn't as thriving as we wanted it to be, and you felt alone. That's one of the things you said. And I think the phrase is often said, especially for leaders or people higher up in organizations, that it's lonely at the top. People say that all the time. And I always tell them, well, it is, but it doesn't have to be. Like, you get to choose if you're going to be lonely, because you can go find community of other people to be around to help you. Because like you said, you got a friend who started ring.com. I mean, that's a great friend to have because he's got a lot of experience in big sellouts. And so, I mean sellouts in a positive way. I don't mean that in the way that it may sound. And so you don't have to be lonely, because you can go, hey, how do you deal with this? Oh, well, here's how we dealt with it.
Now I'm in a lot of masterminds, and I have lots of peer groups where we help each other. We used to meet twice a year with a group of 6 to 10 entrepreneurs, most likely the same. We always, kind of few people come and go. We rent like a fancy villa somewhere in the world and kind of stay there for 3 days or 4 days and share kind of what were our learnings from the last 6 months, kind of the stuff that you don't really share, like the latest marketing hacks, etc. You don't want to share with people. And kind of what's going good and what's going bad, and then kind of just nerd out on this. And this is like so powerful to being part of something like this, or if people joining EO or YPO, it's so good to have this, like-minded people that face the same challenges and just kind of learn from each other. You don't want to be the smartest person at the table. It's not a good thing. That's
right. I always say everybody needs 4 people in their life. They need somebody to look up to, who's a mentor or guide of some sort. They need somebody to stand beside them. Those are peers that are around them who are going through the same struggles. They need somebody that's looking up to them. I believe everybody should be a teacher. And they need somebody that believes in them when they don't believe in themselves. I think if you have all those 4 people in your life, you're going to be really successful. Before we leave mission and vision and values, I want to circle back to one last thing that you talked about earlier, because I think it's super interesting, and I don't think a lot of people apply this. And you talked about refocusing on business, but the idea of taking these business things and applying them to family is very interesting to me. One, because I haven't actually really done it yet. I've thought about it before, but never actually executed on it. And we're about to move into a new house, which will actually be a good time to be rethinking new things, because we're going to have new habits and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk about that just briefly, because I think about business owners and our personal lives. They're not totally separate. Everything affects everything, especially if you've got a spouse, especially if you've got children. Everything affects everything. And so what does that look like to have mission, vision, and values in your home? And talk a little bit about how you use some of those business principles at home. You mentioned it briefly, but I'd love to unpack that just a little bit more, because I think this could be a really powerful idea that a lot of people maybe haven't even thought about doing.
Yeah, so it kind of also boils down in terms of decisions that I make personally, kind of from how to invest my time, how to invest my money, or for example, with my daughter, she's 7, we just, figured out her core values, how she wants to be. And then when she's not living up to them, it's very easy to just kind of point them back to this and say like, okay, yeah, you're right. I agree to being like XYZ. And then, it becomes easier. But I think, same like in the business, like your framework on how you make decisions in life, kind of which project do you start? how you treat each other, how, so if you want, I can share my screen real quick. So for example, this is in Managing Happiness, the course that I'm running. This is my vision, my mission, my core values, and which basically are my wife and I, these are my core values, and also the family core values, just was very linked. The not to-do list, which helps me with my habits, then the roles that I have in my life, because I often just, I'm very focused on business, so it's easy for me to forget the other roles that I have in my life. And then the goals that I have, 10-year, 90-day, and 30-day. And also huge habit nerd, kind of like, because I'm a firm believer that habits determine everything in your life. If you're rich or poor, happy or unhappy, obese or in shape, it all boils down to the habits. So I track my habits as well. And by the way, latest business is UpCoach.com, which is this platform here, which resulted from Managing Happiness, the course. And so we end up building some technology around this to facilitate group coachings better. And now we built this coaching business.
Well, I'm super interested in that. Software. Actually, I just sent your software over to my executive assistant, who's also going to be helping with the new coaching wing of the business. So we've been a kind of a traditional marketing agency, well, digital agency, I would say, for quite a while. And now that is running really well. They don't really need me in the day-to-day. So now I'm kind of working on this new coaching and consulting wing of the business, which is kind of the natural progression, I feel like, a lot of times. And I'm super excited about that piece of the puzzle. When I saw that software, I thought, wow, this looks like a great tool to kind of manage all those aspects of this new business. Because if we're going to have group masterminds, we're going to have one-on-ones, we're going to have all that kind of stuff, we don't really have a clear system to track all that in right now. So good timing for me.
You can also run we have an agenda designer, because since I'm an EOS nerd, I love agendas, I love the level 10 meetings type thing. So you can also, we have them in here in a software version, which I think you really dig. So yeah, I'm excited to jump on another call to run you through a software.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody that's listening or watching and not sure what we're talking about as it relates to EOS, there's a great book by a guy named Gino Wickman. The book is called the book is called Traction, and it is this system called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and we've only been running it now for about 2.5 years of our 21 years, and I wish that I had been running it 10 years ago at least. It's been revolutionary for us from a structural standpoint. It helped me resolve a lot of the weaknesses that I have with regards to systems, process, and just organizing some of those functional sides of the business that maybe aren't as fun, quote unquote, as the design and development, all the other kind of stuff that we like to do. So, all right, great. That was awesome. God, I've got so many other things that you've already talked about that I want to dig into. One thing that I was super impressed with, and obviously you've done enough marketing, but this is just a good master lesson for anybody out there that is listening or watching. When you go to look at David's website, go look at all of his company sites. And what I want you to do when you look at it is notice the messaging on each one. The clarity of messaging in the top fold of your website is just so good. And I love this work. It's some of my favorite work to do for other people. Is that top fold of the website should always tell people, I always say it should tell 3 things. What do you offer? How's it going to make my life better? And how do I buy it? And in pretty much every instance, as I looked at different products, I didn't need to do anything else on the website. I just read the top headline, I read the next thing, and I thought, oh, I know what this is, and I know if it fits something that might be helpful to me or not. I mean, it was just so clear. So anybody that's listening, go look at his websites and you'll get a masterclass in messaging just by looking at those headlines. And also notice that he almost always has one clear call to action. That's a big mistake a lot of people make in marketing is they've got 50 things for people to click on. And we really just need that one next thing that we want them to do. And you do that really, really well. Yeah, keep it simple. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So one thing I'm curious about, and this is a selfish question, so I'm using you for free consulting right now, is on the fact that you have so many different businesses. You mentioned earlier that you have kind of a GM that runs each one. What does that look like structurally? Yeah, or business partner. So what does that look like for you as you set those up, do you find the person and y'all are kind of working together? You're like, you know what, we could probably start a thing, and then it starts. Like, what has that looked like as far as how those things, or do you start it and then you find somebody? Like, what's that mix?
It's a very mixed bag. I talk to a lot of people. I have a very big network, and we work with a lot of people. I think across the businesses we have 200 some employees or so, and so I get to meet a lot of cool people, and it's really random. I can't really put, for example, Speak on Podcast, the latest one that we launched. He was the GM at Task Drive before, and he was super excited about this other idea. And we thought, okay, let's spin this out and turn this into a new business. And now he's running this. The GM now at Task Drive was our head of customer success, and he was just like really awesome. And now he's running the business. My business partner, LTV Plus, I met at a conference in Ukraine where I spoke. And yeah, we just became friends and had like the same idea and same vision talking about this. And it was like, hey, wow, this is actually the same thing that we nerd out hardcore on this topic. And then, okay, let's do this together. With Shortlist.io, I met him on a Facebook group and we chatted a little bit, and then he did a review of our website. And we started the business, and I haven't even met him in person. Now I have, but back then we started the business without even meeting each other. So I guess also just kind of like having a good sense of like people, and I feel like one thing that's my mantra, and this: how you do one thing is how you do everything. This is how I judge people. Like if and this is like gives you a clear idea, like how this person would react in this situation, how would they react in other things, because you are who you are. It doesn't change. If you're an asshole at work, you're an asshole with your wife as well. So it's just you are who you are, and if you're sloppy here, you're probably going to be sloppy there. If you're that's, I guess.
That's just something I'm super, because I've never had a business partner. So I started the business that I run now, when I was a teenager, basically, and it's just grown year over year. But I was saying to somebody the other day, I've not done what you've done, which is spun off all these other businesses, but I feel like now I have all these businesses within the business. Like, we host a lot of websites that could be its own business. Like, it's literally big enough that the hosting itself could be, we do a lot of maintenance on websites. That could be a website maintenance business all by itself. We do some development work that could be its own thing. And so it's like all these other businesses, but they all right now function under the same purpose and the same mission, which is to help other people grow their business. If it didn't, that's when I feel like it would need to be a separate company. Because we were talking about this internally with the coaching and consulting side, and we're like, well, is this a new company? And I'm like, well, I almost think that the company that we have now, we almost need to rename, but it's all still the same mission. The mission is to help other people grow their business, and how we position that is, kind of which side of the pie they're going to move into. So I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. Gosh, so many things that we've covered already. I've loved this conversation. You're the kind of guy that I could talk to all day, which I really enjoy. And I love seeing how you kind of blended some of those EOS things in with your own habits and plans and created your own systems. I'm super interested to dig into that. So let's transition just a little bit. Admitted earlier that you're a bit of a workaholic, which I like. I think most entrepreneurs probably are at some point. But you also said you have a 7-year-old daughter, and you're trying to help her figure out her own core values, and you obviously want to spend time with her and all those kinds of things. So I always love to talk about this idea of work-life balance. That word means something different to everybody. So what I'm curious to know is, number one, what does it even mean to you? And number two, maybe how has that changed through different seasons of business and life?
So I used to be like super focused on the business, and my wife, supported me. She still supports me. She's amazing. And once our daughter was born, we started having a lot more friction, because like everything changes, and it was more needed at home. And so kind of like having this clear roles and responsibility helped tremendously with this. And I think it's about work-life integration. So it kind of like just, now it's actually, it used to be okay, but now that I launched UpCoach, I'm like very focused on this. So I'm working a lot right now. So it's like pretty unbalanced right now. But in general, the idea is that I block out family time in my calendar, and I block out time with my daughter throughout the day. So it's just like everything is kind of time boxed, and I only use Calendly to schedule my meetings. So I will not schedule something that is violating the family time or the time with my daughter or time with my wife. So I think this is like a key thing to get done. But I'm actually at the point right now where we just launched UpCoach, and I had such an influx, and I want to do lots of onboarding calls to really understand the product. So right now I'm like very unbalanced, but I'll get back to this. And I have this indicator for me, which is inbox zero. If I'm not getting to inbox zero for over a week in a row, then I know I have to get back and to kind of like change something in terms of what I'm doing. And I'm at this point right now where it's just like it got out of control. And then I, kind of take a step back and see what can I hand off, who can I hire to take care of this thingy. And so that's usually my process in this. But it's definitely a challenge. It's when you have a business that's kind of established and it's running smooth, and you have proper organization development pieces in place, like if you implement traction properly, then you're going to have an easy way to have proper work-life balance. But if you're in the startup grind, making shit happen phase, then it's challenging, but you can always make it. And I think it's with your loved ones, if you figure out to spend quality time with them, not being on the phone, or like commit to, okay, Monday to Wednesday, I may come home late or I work late, but Thursday and Friday, I'm done by dinner and we do dinner together. If you kind of like make these commitments, then I think it's a manageable thing.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about that too is just, it's so easy to not clearly communicate that until it's too late. And I think going back to what you were saying earlier of like sitting down and figuring out what that plan is, it just changes all the time. And that's why I tell people, especially when they're starting stuff new, this summer we were fortunate enough to do a 30-day RV trip around the country with our family. I've got 5 kids, and it was a blast. We just had such a great time. And I didn't work at all the first 2 weeks. The second 2 weeks, I just checked email a couple of times, but really didn't work that much. And people are like, oh, I could never do that. And I'm like, no, you could. You might not be able to do it right now, but you got to decide when you want to do that. And then you got to ask what needs to be true today for that to be true in the future, because everybody can't just go take 30 days off. But if that's a big goal for you, you can write that down, and it might be 3 years from now before you can accomplish it based on where you're at. And that's fine. But like, at least you have something that you're moving towards. And I think well enough to know, okay, all right, I'm really kind of got the hustle going for UpCoach because we've got so much going on. But you also know, all right, if I do these things at this point in the future, it's not going to be like that anymore.
Yes.
And I think that's where people get burnt out in business, is they start to believe that it's always going to be like this. Like however stressed out or worn out they are right now, they believe there's no hope. And once people lose hope, that's when they get burnt out. But they need a good plan to actually move towards something that's different. Otherwise, if they just keep doing the same thing they've always done, it's going to always be like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh, I feel like there's so many other things we could talk about, but
we can do another show at some point.
We might need to. After I can decompress a little bit. I've really enjoyed our time together. 2 things that I want to make sure people know before we leave today. One is where they can find you online. So if you would share that, and then the second is kind of parting thoughts. When you think about talking to another business owner or entrepreneur who's either thinking about starting a new business, a lot of people right now thinking about starting new things, which is exciting, or people that have been in business for a few years, but they're not sure how to make it work. What parting advice would you give them to build a business that lasts? So where can they find you online, and parting advice to build a good business that lasts?
So people can find me online under davidhenzel.com, which is my site. I used to blog. I'm not blogging anymore, but you can get links to all my different businesses. UpCoach.com is my main focus right now. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm a very social person, so feel free to add me. Happy to chat. And in terms of parting advice, I think read EOS and Build to Sell. I think these are the 2 key books that will help you to build a business that's sustainable, that can run without you. Build to Sell is like the idea is that you build a business that you can actually sell it, versus, if you sell, often agency owners, when they sell it, they're trapped in it. They will not get a high multiple, and they will have to work in the business that acquires them. So they're not really free. But with this build to sell idea, you kind of systematize everything and have SOPs that other people can do it. That you're just basically you build a machine, and then you can take a step back and watch the machine run, and then kind of just like only parachute into areas that are not working so well, and then kind of take a step back. So work on your business, not only in your business. I guess it's the main thing, to build something that lasts. Otherwise, you'll just burn out at some point and kind of are fed up with it.
Absolutely. I love that. David, you've just been such a pleasure to talk to, and so much good counsel and wisdom for everyone. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Jay.
Hey, I hope this video has helped you with some tips and ideas to build a business that lasts. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on the next videos that we roll out. And more importantly, for some awesome free resources, head over to our website at buildingabusinessthatlasts.com. You can get a free copy of my book there, where I tell you how I have built an agency that's grown year over year for the last 20 years in a row. So go grab that, buildingabusinessthatlasts.com, and make sure to subscribe to our channel. Thanks. We'll see you soon.